Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting. In our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago, this week we're looking back at the hot comics from April 16th, 2021. I'm recording this on Friday, October 15th, 2021. I give those dates so that we know when this information was actually relevant, because the comic market is always moving and changing, as we'll demonstrate with the prices on these books from 6 months ago. As always, we're also looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. We look at those two lists. Those are kind of books that have got hot at the moment. It's mostly dominated by modern stuff, that kind of stuff, but a lot of speculation going on those lists. So let's see how those books do 6 months later, so that we all make a little better decisions about what books we chase, what books we're patient on, so that we can do a little better in our collecting. So with that, we got, what do we got? I think 17 books this time. Let's see if we're on the right thing. 18 books this week. So let's get started. First up, we have Jenny Zero #1. This was a recall. This hit the list because it was basically there's a version of the book that was recalled due to printing errors. There were duplicate pages. Pages were out of order. They recalled the book. As always on recalls, it really depends on how many of them actually go back versus how many of them actually still get out in the market. Kind of dominates the price. Plus, is there any interest in the book to sustain it beyond the fact that it's a recall? So if nobody cares about the series, that kind of thing, those always factor in as well. Well, this book jumped up to $40 plus raw right after the recall. The people were chasing it. And now it's a $5 to $10 book. 9.8s are literally selling for $40 to $60, although there was the most recent sale, which just happened this week, was for $130, but that's a complete outlier to the other sales. So it's really on a $5 to $10 book. There was a kind of a high price on that one 9.8 sale. This one is definitely, I predicted trap and I was not strong enough. Going from a $40 book to a $5 book is absolutely a dumpster fire on this one. Just there was no interest. This tends to happen a lot with recall books unless they are just like, there almost has to be something else, or they have to be, and even if they have to be extremely rare, and then there has to be something else. It has to be a series people care about, something to make people continue to be interested. So next we have Gargoyles #1. This hit the list because, not because a new show was coming, but because there were rumors that they were going to bring the show to Disney Plus, the original show from the 90s. Back then, raw copies jumped up to 125 plus. 9.8 was going for $750. Now it's a $40 to $80 book for a raw copy. 9.8 are $300 to $400. I predicted I'll be back on this one, and it turned into a trap. This one is also way down. Yeah, it's neat that it came back to the Disney Plus, but it's not really enough to like keep it going. So next we have Starlight #1. This was basically another Millar project that apparently wasn't part of the Netflix deal because supposedly it was optioned by 20th Century Fox. Raw copies back then for this book were jumped up to $30 for the Starlight project. Now, the two sales that have happened recently were for $1 and for $20, so only two sales in the last several months. This is another kind of dumpster fire. I think a lot of the momentum for this got killed by the non-success of Jupiter's Legacy and some other stuff. But yeah, there's just not a lot of interest in this book right now. Next, we're going to move into covers. We have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 covers this week. So quite a few covers this week. First up, we have Peach Momoko back on the list with Guardians of the Galaxy #13. This is a 1 in 50. This raw copies were going for $65. They had been going kind of like, so $65 back then. There had only been 4 sales for the most part over the last couple of months. Not very many sales, and it was still in the 50 to 90 range, but not really many sales, even though there were a few listed. And then the most recent sale actually only went for $10, and that's the first sale since actually the end of August. So this book is definitely down. Has not sustained the interest. People have not been willing to pay the prices that people are listing them for until we got a $10 one. That was the first sale in forever. So this one's definitely down. So Momoko, I don't know that she's lost luster, but there was a lot of craziness for everything she was putting out. Now there's enough of her stuff out that it really just, they're just not hitting the way it used to. Next we have You Promised Me Darkness #1, the Ananura 1 in 5 variant. This raw copies of this 1 in 5 were going for 30 plus, which is a big number for a 1 in 5. And this was actually technically the week before release. So people were already trying to get this book out in front of it. Now raw copies are 5 to 15, not a bunch of sales. 9.8s are only going for 30 to 60. So this is another one that's turned into a trap. Definitely not a lot of still interest continued with this series. Maybe not necessarily, but definitely not with this cover. I hope you're starting to recognize the theme of this week. The last couple weeks have been this way. Lots of down. Next we have all new Wolverine #1, the Kieran Grant hip hop variant. This is the DMX homage. This is when right after DMX passed away is what caused us to hit the list. Raw copies were going for $100 back then of this homage to his album cover. Now raw copies are 50 to 75, which is kind of where they were at beforehand. This was a fairly popular hip hop variant anyway. 9.8s are going 2 to 300. So this one definitely turned into an I'll be back. It didn't go crazy just after his passing, but it definitely bumped it up. But this is pretty typical when a celebrity or someone passes away. Their stuff goes for more immediately following the passing. But then as people kind of forget about it, move on, it kind of falls back to where it was. Next, we have Kanto and the City of Giants. #1, the Martin Simmons 1 in 25. It's kind of the start of the third volume of Kanto. This 1 in 25 was going for $45 to $50, which is about double ratio. Now what did I say about double ratio? If you watch my prediction show, that usually means they end up between ratio and double ratio. So they're usually I'll be backs. This book is going for 20 to 40, so it's still basically following that very common pattern on 1 in 25s. So another definitely I'll be back. Another book that's down. Next, we have Minky Woodcock, the girl that electrified Tesla, #1. This is the Robert McGinnis Virgin variant. Raw copies of this at release were going for $25-30. There was a little buzz about the series. This was kind of a, sexy cover. Now it's going for 10 to 15. I predicted this was going to be a trap. It didn't quite turn into a trap at 10 to 15, but definitely I'll be back. Next, we have Spawn #237. This is the purple trademark variant. Basically, this is a fairly hard to find Spawn variant. It was going for $520 for raw copy back then. A 9.8 hit $1,800 plus. These rare Spawn variants are usually pretty sustain value pretty well, but this one has not. It's actually come back down. It's now kind of a $200 to $500 book. 9.8s are $750 to $850. So this one has definitely come back. I think there's a few more of these that people thought after they were going for big prices. I think some more hit the market, so it's been kind of back down a little bit. So a little surprised by this one. I typically Spawn stuff just keeps going up, but not this one, not in this case. Our last cover of the week is Joker #2, the Trevor Harrison 1 in 50, which is the first appearance of Bane's daughter, and she's obviously on the cover here. Back then, raw copies were going for $200 to $250. Now it's kind of $150 to $250, so there's a little bit of room in there, a little bit of an I'll be back. 9.8s are going for $400 to $500. There's still a lot of interest in this book, a lot of value in this book. This character is still appearing in this Joker series. My guess is that she's going to have some legs. She's going to be around for a while, so definitely a character to watch. We'll see what kind of value this book continues to hold in the Batverse. So kind of our one steady book of the week. So everything's been down to this point. That was our one steady book of the week. Back on the down list, which is a little surprising, and we got ASM 361, the first appearance of Carnage. Back in the spring, this was kind of following the trailer. 9.8s were hitting $1,300 plus. Now the movie just came out and it got fairly decent reviews. Carnage was in it. And now it's $700 to $1,000 for 9.8. Raw copies are only going for $100 to $200. I really thought the movie and everything that this might prompt this book to really jump, but it has not. Indicating that maybe there's a ceiling for a lot of these symbiotes that aren't named Venom. That's a little lower. There are a lot of these books that exist, and this book appears that the ceiling on it is under $1,000 for a 9.8. So at least for the time being. So this was a bit of a surprise. I thought this one would continue to jump with the movie. It did not, even though the movie wasn't like trashed on or anything. It just didn't hold it, and it hasn't jumped back up even with the movie coming out. Next, we have Lando #2. This is the first appearance of Chana Cha, a bounty hunter that was supposed to be part of this ongoing, I think still ongoing, bounty hunter war storyline that hadn't started yet, but we knew we were getting back then. Raw copies back then of this book jumped up to 10 to 15. This character really doesn't appear to have played a very major role or made much of an impact. Now, raw copies are $1 to $5. And the one 9.8 sale recently went for $80, which 80 for 9.8 is pretty standard for something that there's not a 9.8 for. My guess is if there were several of them, it wouldn't go for that much. So this one's definitely turned into an I'll be back. Next, we have Black Panther #1. So we're moving into MCU stuff here. This is from 1998. This is the first appearance of the Dora Milaje as a group. Raw and several of the members. Raw copies for this book were hitting $50. 9.8s were hitting $500 because they were appearing in Falcon and the Winter Soldier at this point. Now raw copies are going for 15 to 50. So again, I'll be back. Higher grade stuff still going near that $50 mark, but most copies are going for a little bit less. So definitely another kind of I'll be back. Another kind of side character in these Marvel shows that hasn't really held that value. Next, we have Miss Marvel #18, first appearance of Mystique. This hit the list because there was kind of an Easter egg in the show's closing credits that people were tying to Mystique. And basically, raw copies back then jumped up to $225. 9.8 hit $1,100. And this is our one straight cash book of the week. The book has continued to go up. Raw copies are kind of down, 60 to 225. So the higher grade raw stuff is still going for around 225, 200, but most of the mid grade stuff down around 60, under $100. But 9.8s on this book have jumped all the way up to $2,000 to $3,000. So they're going between $2,000 and $3,000 for a 9.8 of this book. Probably long undervalued when it was jumping to just get to $1,000 for Mystique, but it's kind of been corrected. So those high grade 9.8s are definitely still holding a lot of value, even though the book as a whole, like the raw copies, have come down a little bit. So we did put this as up, our only up book of the week that we're going to talk about. All right. Next, we have Wolverine Origins #10. Just the regular, not the rare variant with the third claw, just the 2-claw variant. First appearance of Daken, Wolverine's son, and I think I just pronounced his name wrong, but there you go. Raw copies of this were going for $65 back then. 9.4 went for $200. Not a lot of graded copies of this. Again, had to do with Easter eggs that like kind of were linked to him, related to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now raw copies are 25 to 75, so a bit of an I'll be back in that same kind of range, but a bit of an I'll be back. But a 9.6 sales, so I couldn't find any 9.4 sales recently. 9.4 went for $200 back then. Now 9.6s are going for $100 to $150. So this book is definitely backed up a little bit. So next we have Captain America 312 on the list again for the second or third time in the last couple weeks. First appearance of Flag Smasher. Again, we talked about this, that in the show it was Carly, not Carl. So a different version of the character back then, though. Raw copies were still jumping up to $50. 9.6 went for $325. Now raw copies are going for $5 to $25. 9.8 only went for $115. So think about that. A 9.6 was going for $325 back then. Now a 9.8 only will get you $115. Definitely not a book that was worth investing in. So definitely a book that's come way back down. So if you did like the character and you wouldn't mind having this alternate version, probably if they ever do an MCU thing, would have been her dad or something, then yeah. So, but yeah, this book is definitely backed up. 2 more books to go. We have next Strange Tales #159. The first appearance of Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, also known as the second Madam Hydra. She's being played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We've also seen her now show up in Black Widow. So appears to be a character that's going to be around a little bit going forward in Marvel. So raw copies were going for $150 to $175. A 9.2 hit $1,200. 9.6 hit 2,000 when she appeared. I talked about the sales overnight after the show released. The 550, like, yeah, so it was jumping, like, it went from basically $550 to like the $1,200 book for those higher grade stuff, like after she actually appeared. Raw copies now are going for 50 to 200. So again, the higher grade stuff's still kind of going in that same range, but most of the anything lower than that still has dropped back considerably. 9.2, no recent 9.6 sales, but a 9.2 did go for $885. But despite the fact that we know we're getting more of her, this is definitely still turned into an I'll be back. Again, a side Marvel character, hasn't been able to really sustain those high values when they first appear in the comic market. So seems to be a pattern going on for sure with that. Last but not least this week, we have Captain America number 25, first appearance of Sam Wilson as Cap. I know there's some dispute about this, that maybe it's a different book. But anyway, this is the widely accepted book, I guess, or most widely accepted book, that this is the first. Back then, raw copies only jumped up to $30. The 9.8 did hit $415. Now it's still going 25 to 50, kind of in that same range. But 9.8s are down to 250 to 300. So another kind of I'll be back. It has been interesting to see like what the values have done on characters like Echo and other characters that we know we're getting, but we haven't gotten yet. Riri, and how big those books have jumped. And yet a book like this, a book like the first Winter Soldier, those books have not been able to sustain or go to those kind of heights. So it's just interesting. I realize this is not their first appearance, but you talk about like Miss Marvel number 1, which is like not her first appearance, but that book is, a couple $100 for a raw copy almost. So just interesting the way that the market has moved related to some of these characters. Even these ones that appeared a bunch aren't necessarily even holding the value of characters that have not appeared yet. Makes you wonder about how good an investment some of those are. So that is this week's list. We had one book that went up, one book that was steady, and the other 16 books dropped. Here, I'm going to show those slides, but I want to thank you, show the wrap-up slide, but I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.